The most precious thing you could have asked Allah for was forgiveness. The greatest prize that Allah could give you in Ramadan, and the Prophet ﷺ was not saying this to someone that really had to worry from our perspective. It was Aisha radiallahu anha asked the Prophet ﷺ, what do we do in the last 10 nights if we think Laylatul Qadr is here? The main thing, ask Allah for forgiveness. The day of Arafah, the prize of the day of Arafah is forgiveness. That doesn't mean don't ask Allah for this world. That means how proportionate is your dua to your priority. Now, subhanAllah, notice that Allah Azza wa Jal responded to a people who only make dua for dunya and they don't care for akhirah. Because you rarely find people on the other end. You're rarely going to find someone who spends too much of their time making dua for the akhirah. And if they do, then that could represent another problem. That could represent, a poor assumption of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because your Lord is generous, your Lord is merciful. He loves to give you. Fas'alu, ask, Allahu Akbar, Allah is more. Ask Allah for the worldly things. Ask Allah for the halal. Ask Allah for these things. It's okay. You have a Lord that loves when you ask. So adjust your proportion and then ask Allah. Don't say, I'm such a sinful servant. I'm not even going to bother asking Allah for worldly things. I'm just going to ask Him for things of the hereafter instead, because that's all I care about. That sounds like you could be coming from a noble place, right? SubhanAllah, I came across this hadith. Anas radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he says that the Prophet ﷺ visited one of the Sahaba. And he said, this man was dying. I mean, he was so sick. Literally describes him, he was like a bird that was dying. I mean, he was crumbled in his bed, about to die. And the Prophet ﷺ went to visit him. And he said, هَلْ كُنْتَ تَدْعُ بِشَيْءٍ? Were you making dua for anything? Were you asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for anything? I mean, as you were in this situation? He said, I used to say, اللهم ما كنت معاقبني به في الآخرة فعجله لي في الدنيا. He said, oh Allah, whatever you were going to punish me with in the hereafter, hasten it for me in this dunya. Punish me in this dunya, let me get it over with. Let me go through the pain and the suffering in this world, and don't punish me in the hereafter. The Prophet ﷺ said, that's what you used to make dua for? هَلْ كُنْتَ تَدْعُ بِشَيْءٍ? That was your dua all this time? Oh Allah, torture me in this life so that I don't suffer in the next life? The Prophet ﷺ said, Subhanallah la tutiquhu. He said, you're not going to be able to handle that. This isn't what you're supposed to be doing. No, you don't ask Allah. It could be coming from a noble place. This is coming from a sincere place. Radiyallahu anhu, may Allah be pleased with him. But you don't ask Allah, punish me now so that you don't punish me then. That's not the type of Lord that you're asking. So the Prophet ﷺ says, say instead, رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. O our Lord, grant us the best of this life and the best of the hereafter, and protect us from the punishment of the fire. Again, proportionality. Proportionality. When you make dua to Allah, exert yourself the most when you ask for the things of the hereafter. And ask Allah for the highest of this life and the next. Ask Allah for al-firdaus al-a'la, for the highest level of al-firdaus. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for these things. And there is no such thing as a dua that's made in vain, so long as your pursuit is right. And that's why the believer does not become bitter and dejected with their dua, because they know that they have an understanding with their Lord that if my dua was not answered in the way I wanted it to for this dunya, then Allah stored it for the greater goal that was also present in my dua, which was salvation in the hereafter. Tarjuna min Allahi ma la yarjun. What you want from God is different. Your wish list should be at the top, or at the top of that wish list should be, oh Allah, grant us al-firdaus al-a'la. Oh Allah, protect us. And dear brothers and sisters, husn al-dhan in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having a good expectation of Allah, part of that is that you have a practical responsibility to every portion of that dua. Fi dunya hasana, oh Allah, grant us the welfare of this dunya, the best of this life, then pursue dunya with halal. Pursue this life with only halal things. وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً. And in the hereafter hasana, pursue it with a'mal. Pursue it with good deeds. Put your good deeds towards what you're asking Allah for. وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. And protect us from the punishment of the fire. Then protect yourself from the disobedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وقنا عذاب النار اللهم آمين أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم